Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna ease into this. I've probably got about 45 minutes, so we'll go steady. This is talk about my day job, so I have to talk about work quite a lot. So apologies for the big logo, but it needs to be on brand. Just before I start, I want to cover a little bit of housekeeping, because I was in Manchester last week, which I know is terrible, but I was there talking at the Hadoop meetup, and at rental cars, where the event's held, there's a big pillar down the middle, and there's two screens. It's like 2 hours of the audience. And on one side, there's glass out onto the street, it's ground floor. And they've got blinds behind the screen, but they only go so far down because there's a bench. And unbeknown to me, whilst I was talking, and I think this relates to the spice reference earlier, but in Manchester, I think it's a different kind of spice. Apparently, there was a gentleman collapsed on the floor. You could only see his feet. He'd had the kindness to collapse with his head out of view. And an ambulance came with the blue lights flashing, pulled up. He walked into the ambulance, which I think is a good sign. But I didn't know about this. So half the audience was watching these feet being looked after by ambulance people. And then yesterday I was doing a talk and someone nearly choked to death on a hamburger. So if you could all please be careful. If you have any petrol with you or 3-bar electric fires, put them somewhere safe and please don't go into labour. Thank you. Right, I better get on with this really. I'm not entirely sure why I should be speaking at an Agile event, because I'm a techie, I'm a doer. Up until 3 years ago, I'd never used Agile. I was probably one of the best waterfall experts in Leeds, maybe. But I certainly work in an Agile environment now. And this talk is entitled Devops, because that's what I do. In a data warehouse. Yeah, cool, right, data warehouses. Rock and roll, let's have some fun. And speaking of unicorns, my employer is referred to by the local press as a unicorn. That's nice, isn't it? So, at work, let me introduce myself. So my name's Andy, as Roy told you. That's my job title, Lead Devop Engineer. That's my Twitter handle if you want to troll me. Please feel free. I'd like the company. And I've done lots of technical things over the years. First commercial gig was a COBOL programmer on an IBM mainframe. Don't let this useful look fool you into thinking I'm not old. I'm very middle-aged. And I've done lots of development. I've done front-end, back-end, client-side web stuff, lots of stuff with databases, and more recently, a lot of infrastructure as code, and even more recently, Hadoop, which is a data warehousing solution. So, as this talk is about my day job, I need to tell you about work. Okay, so this isn't a hard sell, this is just a scene setter. So we'll have a little brief history of work. And Sky Bet are online bookies, we don't have shops. Main products are sports betting, so football, horse racing, tennis, golf, etc. And then there's a load of online games, so poker, casino, Vegas. And we've got some free-to-play stuff, which you might have seen on Sky Sports, kind of cross-sell with those, and our odds comparison website, Odds Checker. So that's what we do. And the reason we have such a large technical presence is a few years back, decision made by the business to do our own front end, and it worked out really well because it just happened to time with the boom in mobile gaming and gambling. So we had a couple of delivery teams. We worked out that we needed a DevOps function to interface with the infrastructure people and also to work with the service desk. And that worked fine for a while, but we grew, we're in about 30% year on year at the minute, which is, massive growth really. And we had to expand. And we split ourselves into roughly the Spotify model, and I don't want to get into the leads and chapters and all that stuff. But I really want to just make the point that we went to autonomous teams, choosing what we were doing, working on the stuff we needed to work on. That's kind of the point of that. And we've grown again. So now we've got, as well as in Leeds, we've got Sheffield, who are looking after core accounts, and the international operation. And today, well, I haven't got a bloody clue, to be quite honest. There's Sheffield, there's Rome. We've got an Italian presence now. I think there's an office opening in Germany soon. And we've got floors of the white wedgie buildings and other buildings in Leeds. So there's a lot of us. I think the number seems to change all the time, depending who I ask. Sometimes it's 800, sometimes it's 1,300. I don't know if that's technical or whether that includes call centre staff and all the business function as well. Anyway, we're growing. But in this massively expanding, hyper-cool, DevOps-oriented business, there are some little pockets left where we didn't quite keep up, or we started a bit later, and things haven't necessarily been kept in line with the rest of the business. And one such place is where I work, in the Data Tribe. So this is really a story of the last 18 months, 2 years since I joined the team. And they started off with just a couple of people using a data warehouse product that we'll call them Big Sky run. And that was fine for a couple of years. But it turned out if you stick a load of transactional bets into a data warehouse product that's designed for monthly subscriptions, you fill it up pretty quickly. And Sky weren't too happy about that. So we decided to get our own data warehousing solution. We settled on Hadoop. And by 2014, we've got a development team working on this Hadoop cluster. They're working alongside Insights and CRM, because that's what they do. And this diagram represents here our development teams and a DevOps. Okay, that's the red guy. And what we're doing at the point is we're taking loads of data from around the business into our big data warehouse, crunching the numbers, doing enrichment, doing analysis, taking that enriched data, sticking in an Oracle caching layer, and then the CRM team are using their tools to do reporting and email fulfillment, etc. And that's great. This is working really, really well. So this is 2014. One team working on this stuff. And the business realised that this could be actually quite useful. Loads of potential with this system. So they said we want more. We want more data. We want more stuff. We want to be able to do more things. And this is roughly the kind of data we've got. So we've got basically churn prevention, we've got fraud detection, customer engagement stuff, and we're now moving towards more real-time stuff. That was kind of an aspiration at the time in 2014. So now, in the new look Data Tribe, we've grown a bit. Okay, so we've now got 4 development squads who are working on stuff. We've got our Insights CRM team, and we've now got 4 members of the Devops team, data operations. And they're all working together to run this cluster and write code that produces all this lovely enriched data, which they can analyze and use around the business. So looking specifically at the team that I work in, and as I was at a conference, I thought I'd have a law, because you can do that when you stood up in front of people. You can invent a law. This is Burgin's law. It's probably not all mine. I might have nicked a bit of it from somewhere, but I can't remember where, so I'll take the credit. And what I'm basically saying that doing architecture is easier than doing dev. Dev is easier than testing. Testing is easier than debugging, which is easier than deploying and certainly easier than running the show. So ops is the hard bit. I can say that because that's what I do. You may have a different opinion, but to me, that's the law. Okay. If that gets quoted out, that's going to be so funny. So this is my team. I'm one of those red things there. This is the DevOps squad in data, or DataOps. Let's give them a funky name. Makes sense. And we've been put together as part of this expansion. And we've got a team that we've put together that aren't just systems administrators. These guys do dev. They're there to write infrastructure as code. They're there to write Python tooling around that. They've all got a dev background. And they're going to make the tools that make the platforms better, okay? Work with the dev squads. So this is what we were tasked to do. This is last year's to-do list. upgrade our Hadoop cluster, replace our legacy infrastructure as code, so rip out the Ansible stuff we had, which isn't anything wrong with Ansible. We've got a whole load of chef around the business, and if we use that stuff, we get all the PCI stuff that's been coded by the other teams into that, and that makes PCI auditing easy. We're doing a data center failover and DR. We've got our cloud stuff to look at, so putting clusters in AWS. We've got a file transfer system to replace, but we've got a lot of day-to-day stuff. So we need to help all those new squads with their CI and their CD solutions. And of course, BAU stuff, resilience, performance, making sure the clusters are working and the tooling. And if we get a chance, we could look at some tech debt as well. That'd be kind of handy, right? So that's what we were charged with doing. It's a bit of a problem. A little bit of a problem. Before I go any further, has anybody got any aversions to animations or flashing things? I should check that. Nobody, right? Okay, there will be some. I will let you know when. Okay, I should have said that at the beginning. I apologise. So we've got a problem, and it's not with flashing or animation, and it's not with our recruitment team who thought that was in some way a good slogan to put for recruitment. But it's kind of true, particularly in the data tribe back then. Our problem is, if you remember, our 4 dev squads and the DevOps team at the end. Here's some animation. And this is kind of happening. We're kind of getting lots of problem tickets from them. It kind of felt, it was even worse than that. It kind of felt like, there was other teams throwing stuff at us. And we've got this board with all the things on that list before we need to be doing, and we're not getting any of it done because we're getting all these problem tickets. And it feels like, again, more animation, that we're kind of the go-to team. We're the problem solvers. People come to us with problems rather than working stuff out ourselves. And it feels pretty much like this. Okay? That's why the team's not happy. And that's really the gist of this talk. It's about how we got over that. Because a lot of DevOps initiatives come top down. This one was when we had to force ourselves from the team to make ourselves happier because our jobs were sucking at that time. And this is what we did. So, recapping on DevOps really quickly, normally we get this with the standard mean of the dev team working on stuff, making changes, throwing it over the wall to the ops team to run, them not really having any visibility of it, and sending rude emails back about the code release because it didn't work. And then a big squabble about whose fault it was. And essentially, if you look at this from an organisational point of view, we've got misaligned incentives. This team gets bonuses on the features it delivers. This team gets bonuses based on stability. And it's all a big mess, okay? And that's roughly the problem that the DevOps movement was trying to solve initially. But it's become a lot more than that. It's become a lot more than DevStar Ops, this idea of including all the other teams into the problem. I much prefer that definition. I think it's much more relevant to what modern software development is and modern operations. So, what were we going to do? How were we going to fix this? Well, we thought, well, let's go and do some more reading. Let's do some more learning. Let's go back to basics. Let's work out all the stuff that the DevOps movement was trying to solve. Let's recap on that. So we read some books. Some of them you'll recognise. We couldn't read that one because no one had read it at the time, but it is available now. If anybody's not seen that book, it's ace and it's only £6. I think he worked at DWP for a while as well, Grant Smith, if anybody knew him. But we went and we read some books. And we looked at some podcasts. We listened to the podcasts, these two. We watched a load of DevOps Days videos, so the big DevOps Days conference. We went and looked at videos from those. We went to a couple of conferences, meetups, tech conferences, tech festivals even. We went to those. But of course, we've got all these other bits of the business that have been doing this for years and are dead good at it. We should probably go and ask them what they do. So coming out of that, we've got these principles. I could have added the CANS one to it, but it wasn't really relevant to our problem. But in the DevOps books, they talk about 3 ways of DevOps. The 4 types of work, products versus projects, and of course, we've got our friends in the other teams to ask. So there were the 4 things we were going to look at. So in terms of the 3 ways, and I apologise if this is DevOps 101, but it'll be useful to some of you, I'm sure. The idea is to maximise flow left to right. So these handoffs between the teams, getting them quickly. So we can do things like reduce the batch size, have better communication to do that. And then the second way is to amplify the feedback loops coming the other way. So that's stop the production line stuff. Make sure if there's a problem up here, that these people down this end know about it as well. And then the third is having a culture of experimentation or learning. So this idea of Kaizen from the TPS, constantly improving, having a learning organisation, which is easier said than done. So there's those three principles. And the DevOps books tell us there's four kinds of work. Okay? There's business projects, so that's the stuff you're meant to be working on. That's what the business wants from you. There's internal IT, so for us, that's stuff like upgrades, making sure the backup works, that kind of thing. Making sure we upgraded stuff and stuff is patched. And coming out of those two, there's a whole bunch of changes which we have to manage and do. And then there's the last one, which is the problem one. This is what the books told us, and it kind of seemed very familiar. Unplanned work, sometimes recovery stuff, but this is the stuff that just turns up and gets in the way. Sounds real familiar. And they told us what we needed to do was do everything we could to stop that from happening. Because the more of that you do, the less of that you do, and that would actually fix that problem from happening. So that's what they said. Concentrate on that. I won't take credit for this because this is borrowed directly from Damon Edwards, who's one of the experts in the DevOps field. But he talks about this idea of products versus projects. And he explains that when you've got an organisation that's handing off work between departments, every time there's a handoff, a bit of information is lost about it. So in terms of business objectives of why a piece of software was written, by the time you get to the ops team, they've no idea why it was written. All they know is it needs to run 24/7, listen on port 8000, not consume more than 20% of the memory, that kind of thing. And that information is lost going this way because they're not sharing that information with the dev team. So the dev team doesn't really know what it runs on unless they go and ask. They're not involved in that decision-making process. And for me, the kind of key moment for me in Agile was when this was explained to me, was this idea that projects are an absolutely stupid idea. Because most of the project managers I'd worked with, in my experience, the last milestone on the Gantt chart was live. And for me, in the ops team, that's actually when it started. So I got a big distaste of projects now. Equally, when you hit the live thing, this team disband and go and do other things. They're not there to ask. They're not there to help, to work things out for yourself. And grant. Whereas when you've got product teams or cross-functional teams, so we take all those people on that previous diagram, we restructure them in a non-P45 fashion, and we put them into product teams, cross-functional teams. And they can own features, they can own products. So you can have a shopping basket team, you can have an inventory team, you can have a mobile app team. And they own that on an ongoing basis. So if there's a problem, they have to fix stuff. They're even on call for it. It's cool, isn't it? So you get this cross-sharing of skills, you get this idea of autonomy, mastery and purpose. And more importantly, because they're all working on the same stuff, they're all the same stand-ups, all that business knowledge is shared as to what the hell this thing is. And it engages people in owning it, wanting to look after it. So we thought that was really, really appropriate. Then we went and spoke to the other teams and we said, what are you doing now? Because at the time, a while ago, before it got complicated and big, we had separate ops teams within each tribe. They didn't in core, but they were a bit smaller. So we spoke to the gaming tribe and we said, you used to have that. What do you do now? And they said, well, you see, the problem was they just threw all the tickets at us to get stuff done. So we changed it the way we work. We did the DevOps thing. And we put a couple of new teams in place. And we moved the DevOps into each squad. The old platform squad is kind of what's left of the DevOps team. And that's going away. Whereas this is a new team called the SRE team, Site Reliability Engineering. And they're going to do all the main sort of platform work. They're not there as a support team. But these guys are put into these squads, not just to do all the ops stuff for those particular teams. That would be silly, because that's not cross-functional. The idea is to spread that knowledge and make logging, monitoring, backup, performance, things that are considered during the application development phase and not just tagged on at the end when we go, ooh, we'll fail the AAS if we don't put monitoring on. So we're kind of making these guys a bit more red, so they're more of a purpley colour. They're sharing that knowledge, going back to that product team kind of thing. So, okay, we've got all this knowledge about what the other teams are doing. How are we going to make our day-to-day working better? So we looked at the 3 ways. And we had a pretty good working relationship with the other squads, actually. There wasn't really the silos there. We didn't have a blame culture, which wasn't our fault. But we don't have a blame culture. We didn't have squabbling. We didn't have fighting. We were just getting asked to do all the things, which is a bit different to actually finger-pointing exercises. And there's this definition of Devops called CAMS, which is about culture, automation, measurement and sharing. And the reason we kind of ignored it was it's getting a bit past it now as a definition because this culture bit of it is just the any other business that isn't technical, and everything's getting kind of lumped in there, and it's getting quite confusing to segment out what they actually mean by culture anymore. What we realised is this was the way the original warehousing team worked. And they had this guy here. He's actually an architect now. When we formed the new teams, he moved into an architecture role. But they used to bring him all of the problem tickets, and he would fix things because he's dead clever. And what we realised is, when we created the 4 teams, and we moved a couple of these guys into the other squads, we just scaled the problem up. That's what had actually happened. So it's more the fact of the volume of problems coming to us, but the fact it's happening in the first place. We look at projects versus products. This is kind of interesting because we thought about, do we have a product? And we worked out we've got this system, this platform that we look after. It's kind of a PaaS, and apologies to any cloud evangelists in the room for definitions. But we kind of run this system. But it's not really a product at the minute because we've only got one of them. We don't really have a plan for it other than upgrades and fixing things. Support-wise, yeah, there's some documentation, but it's not kind of in a supporting documentation that you could give to somebody else to use. It's a collection of knowledge-based articles we've written. And all the non-functional stuff, some non-functional requirements that are not to be confused with non-requirements. They're still needed or things break. We were doing all that stuff. And we didn't have a way of doing self-service. We couldn't really push this out as a product or a service for other teams to use because, we didn't have that capability. And we thought, okay, so if we've got a product who's our customer, who is it that's actually using our stuff? So we looked at our stand-up. It's a bit dark. Essentially, there's our boards across the back, and this is the picture of the stand-up. There's an engineer and manager in the middle, and they're discussing stuff. And we basically tried to work out who the hell is our customer. Is it the engineering manager? Is it the CRM people? Is it the insights people? Is it the people generating reports? And what we soon realised was that actually it's our dev squads. They're our customer. They're actually who we're helping. It's not the other way around. We kind of thought we were their customer, but actually they're our customer. We make things for them. They consume our stuff. And really, we are running a PaaS on top of the infrastructure that is provided by other teams. And the SaaS, which is the CRM platform, which is used by the insights planners, etc. in CRM, are consuming the data that's on the platform. But there's kind of this data development squad doing data as a service, almost. Now, that is invented. But that's kind of the layered approach that we were actually working with. And it turns out, when we thought about it, we'd actually got a few more products. Yeah, we got the cluster. But we do a hell of a lot with Jenkins. We have a lot of CI boxes. We use Jenkins for our job scheduling engine for the cluster. So Jenkins is kind of actually one of the products we support, in quotes. And all the new stuff we've been asked to do, like the AWS stuff, and more recently some containerization stuff, they're also products which we're supplying. And if we'd have bothered to talk to the service lifecycle managers, why would we? But anyway, they've got this whole service catalogue of things that need to run for the business. So if we'd actually gone and spoken to them, they would have given us a big list of all the products, all the service catalogue stuff that's in there. So we could have saved a lot of time by going there first. So we've got this idea, if we've got products and we've got customers of the products, could we get to that? Could we get them to run their own stuff and to make their own stuff and support their own stuff? That would be ideal. When we looked at the 4 types of work, so business projects, internal IT, the changes from those and the unplanned work, we had to work out how to deliver this stuff because we're just under this big sludge of tickets coming from the squads. And it does say you've never worked at anywhere so agile on there. Is that me? I thought it was my tinnitus. So basically, we were running with a Kanban board. So all our tickets are coming in, and things are going in the backlog, and we have to work through stuff in priority order. And that's fine for the way we thought we wanted to work. But it turns out we want to actually be a dev team. We've got devs in the team. We want to be a platform team. How do we transition from that to something else? And in fact, what should we even do? So if we go back to this photo, now there are some transitions here. The brightness isn't going to help. Hold on tight. If we look at this and then look at our boards, whoa. We've got 3 boards here, or 3 areas of boards. This is going to be quite hard to explain, but I'll do my best, okay? And this is what one of our dev teams uses to manage their work. They've got a backlog refinement area at the bottom where they triage and elaborate. And then at the top, they've got a Scrum board. So 2-week sprints, story points, avatars, stuff moves left to right. I'm sure you've seen these before, right? Okay. But that's how they were managing their development work. And we had Kanban. So we thought, that's a good idea. We should do that. That's what dev teams do. That's the way they dev things. So let's do that. So this board on the right is ours. And what we did was down here is a very dark Kanban board, but it's there. It's like that diagram from before. But we put in a Scrum board. So we're running with 2-week sprints. And we got the help of our Scrum Master, because only a few of us had done this before. I hadn't done it before. To run our sprints. So 2-week sprints, refinement sessions, planning sessions, story pointing. We run the sprint for the 2 weeks. And then at the end of it, we have we review the numbers and have a review of what we've done. Okay, and then start the next sprint. So we are doing it in a proper agile way, because I don't know any different. I'm told it's proper. Okay, you probably know different. The thing we did, because we still hadn't addressed the unplanned work stuff, we got the business stuff and we got the internal IT stuff in there. What were we going to do about that? Well, that was where the unplanned work was going to go. We were going to leave that, because the other teams were used to sending the unplanned work to the Kanban board. So we leave that in place. But out of the 4 of us, we rotate someone around looking after that. Now, there's 2 ways you can look at that. As a team member, you could say, darn, 1 week in 4, I have to deal with that. I don't like that. That's the thing I don't like doing. Or you can say, for 3 weeks out of 4, I get to make stuff. I get to do stuff. I get to do the thing I'm employed to do with my skills. And that's made a big difference. That stopped the grumbling. That stopped the moaning. It meant our team were actually doing what they wanted to do. We'd empowered them. They could do stuff and do things that they wanted to do. And yeah, it wasn't an overnight switch, because we still had a lot of stuff in that backlog to deal with. But slowly, as we moved over and started getting the idea that you couldn't throw all the problems at us, they started to ebb away a little bit. And now we can do the 3 weeks on, 1 week off kind of thing. There's a conversation at one of the open spaces about how do you make sure you're working on the right stuff. And the way we make sure we're doing the right thing for the business is we have sprint goals. They're kind of not dictated to us, but they're chosen, and we do the work that relates to those goals to achieve those sprint goals. And the way we do it, again, in the dark world, there's a board on the left, and this is our elaboration board. Basically, it's a grid. Different product areas across states down. So the stuff at this end should be stuff that's actually in flight and we're working on. So these are kind of like more sort of products and features that need to be delivered. And somebody was speaking about WSDF scores. So we score all these and then we prioritize what we're going to do. And we review this regularly. So this is predominantly a board used by our architects, used by our BAs, our product owners, and some of the engineering management team to prioritize what we should be working on. What's a bit different about this in our organisation is I get to go and talk about that as well. So as a guy who's in charge of an engineering team, I can say, oh, you want to be doing that, do you? That ticket down there, that particular feature. You do realise we need to do this one up here first because that's a dependency. And the product owners will go, oh, I didn't realise. So we have to move things around. And that's really powerful as someone who's in charge of a technical team, having the visibility and having the power to actually meddle in what we're doing at a more strategic level. So this early engagement board feeds into our sprint goals ultimately. If we look at what the other teams were doing, well, we're not ready yet because we haven't built enough stuff to move our DevOps into the squads. We haven't got our platforms there. We're not ready to do that. But we realised out of these squads, there were two very different types that were generating all this stuff that we needed to deal with. We've been here ages, we know what we're doing, we like it as it is. We actually quite like that everything is a freaking DevOps problem because it's easy and that's the way we've always worked. We needed to change that attitude. Equally, we've got some of the newer teams that are going, give us the shinies, we want the new stuff. Docker's going to solve everything, give us the Docker. So really, the second part and the biggest part of our problem related to ownership and related to responsibilities. And that's the big thing we needed to change. And being techies, we can't just go to the teams and say, it's not our problem, take it away. Because that's very anti-DevOps, isn't it? You're meant to be collaborative, you're meant to be helpful, you're meant to assist other teams. You can't say no to the devs, right? Okay. But what we realised is we could actually change things. We need a management buy-in to do it. But we got a lot of stuff we were replacing, a lot of old stuff, a lot of tech debt stuff. So some of our services, and these were the products we spoke about earlier, we needed to replace because we were doing new infrastructure as code, we were replacing that. So we had to rebuild these servers, replace them. A lot of the stuff, not a lot of stuff, some of the stuff had become quite snowflaked where libraries had been installed, that kind of things. And yeah, I'll put it in the Ansible, and it never happened. We were going to be a lot more disciplined about that. We were going to work a lot more aligned with how we should do stuff. We were going to make sure we chefed all the things. We were going to make sure that we didn't do snowflaking. So what we realised is if we put self-service tooling on the new stuff as we built it, so this is generates a configuration file for an Hadoop cluster in CloudFormation. We can take that, and then when we throw up our new clusters in Amazon, we can use that as the basis for how it sets it all up. So that's really easy. The end goal is to have our dev teams self-service environments. Select a size, click a button, it provisions it, it dies at 6 o'clock when you've gone home because it's expensive to keep it running. But that's where we're trying to go with the AWS tool. We've also done a heck of a lot with Chef. We've rebuilt our infrastructure as code. Now, what we've actually realised is if we genericize our products, so like our Jenkins builds, like our container framework, which is something we're going to do, and the Hadoop builds, we can then have the customization, the stuff which was previously snowflaked, in other chunks of Chef code. So that there's like a base build and there's like a customization layer. And that means when we move to the DevOps in squads, they can own that customization layer. The central or platform team can own the main build. And we're starting to force that thinking of you build it, you run it, you love it. So by using code and by using a bit of management buy-in, we're replacing all these servers. We're able now to say, okay, this Jenkins box, where previously it was snowflake to hell and we don't touch it because it might break things we don't know, we've now been brave, we've replaced that. You can set it up however you like. Your code's going to go into version control. That's fine. That's where your job definitions are going to go now. And that means whenever we want, as a DataOps team, we can tear that server down and rebuild it, resync it with the repo, and it'll be just like it was before. It'll work the same. And that's really powerful. And that means we can literally go, there's your Jenkins server, fill your boots. Any problems with that, you now have to solve it. And that's a very different way of working, and that's started to stem this flow of problem tickets because they own it, they have to look after it. And I don't really have any metrics with this because if I look at the number of tickets we were getting through in Kanban, and we look at what we're doing now, and we look at the sprints as well, there's not really a massive disparity between the number of tickets, and of course all tickets are different sizes, and it's quite a hard metric to get out, particularly with the old Kanban stuff. But it's roughly the same. So but the only metric I've got is this mean time to happiness, really, for our DevOps team. Basically, the moans per minute went down quite considerably. And that's a good metric. So in terms of outcomes, yeah, we did all that stuff. Some of the stuff we haven't got quite done because we've got some data governance problems with people putting data into cloud environments. Apparently that's a bad thing, so we can't do everything we wanted to do. But we've certainly done 80% of what we set out to do, apart from the tech debt. Still quite a bit of that there. Still some downsides. It feels wrong having to get the teams to own their stuff. It would be much better if they just wanted to. But I think that's an attitude. And certainly some of the newer teams that want to look after their own stuff are certainly embracing this. It's slow when you're building your own tooling. It's taken a lot longer and been a lot harder than we thought. An organisational change is still hard, even from the bottom up. It's possible to do it, but it's still hard. And the other thing we've learned is when we've had a big bunch of urgent projects, so this is quite recently, we've had a data centre move, we've had a PCI audit, we've had Grand National, that was inconvenient. All those things have meant we've had to really stop on the platform stuff, and we've had to go back to really dealing with just the operational Kanban board. So it's really easy to return back to being that ticket silo. You do have to work at it, and you do have to kind of force the issue to stay on top of it. But we've got happy team members, they've got autonomy, they're working on what they want to do. We've got control over the work that we're actually doing and the work that's coming in. We're making these small incremental changes to responsibilities and ownership. And we've now got a small portfolio of products that we look after. We know what stuff is ours and what stuff isn't. And we're starting to prepare for this moving into, moving the ops guys into squads. We do a lot of interesting writing on our engineering blog. If you've not seen it, have a look. Some quite interesting stuff on there on some latest technologies. Not so much on organisational change, but I thought I'd give it a plug. And that's really the journey so far at the minute. And if you've got any questions, we have about 15 minutes. Fire away.
Thanks, Andy.